Hi.
Likewise, I'm
Nice to
super
meet you, Ashley.
excited. How are you?
Me too. I am excited as well because for so many reasons. I have to start from the first. First of all, it's the first time that we actually meet. We just spoke on via email, and I'm very happy you actually accepted this invite. Is it your first time
No,
in Italy, like
I've
even
been
virtually?
to
Is it,
Italy.
or
I
you?
actually can't wait to go back. I've been to Rome, Milan. So yeah.
Nice.
No.
It's okay. So it's not the first time, which is great. So you know a little bit of Italy already. I don't
Yes,
have
and
to
the
tell you
food
anything
is
about it,
amazing. Some of
I
the
guess.
best food I've ever had.
I know. That's one of the reasons why I came back after I spent 7 years in the States from New York, and I was in New York and LA, and then I decided to come back home. So that's one of the reasons.
So right
Where are
now
you
I'm in
exactly?
San Diego.
I
So I
didn't.
go back and forth from San
Oh,
Diego, California to Seattle, Washington. So I'm hybrid back and forth.
that's amazing. Okay, okay. I want to just I would like to spend most of the time listening to what you can share with us tonight. It's going to be only 30 minutes, so I want to really like spend very little time just so that you also understand why I requested your help with me tonight. Um, the reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you is because I founded an association in 2016 that talks about improbable talent, which is a talent that doesn't find support in different ways from the platforms or the stages, doesn't see it's himself or herself reflected on these stages. So it needs support to kind of shine and be able to express in any way, shape, or form. So what the association that I founded does is basically try to talk about this kind of needs and this kind of people that like me in the past needed to understand that they had a value so that they could trust themselves and do what they wanted to do in life. Specifically, me as a Black Italian, I found it hard to believe that I had a future in Italy as a Black woman and a Black artist. So I needed to find myself, and that's why I traveled, and that's why I kind of like forced myself to understand what it was and what it meant to be a Black Italian in Italy, of course. And one thing also I'm going to add is that just a few weeks ago, something very new to me happened. Not new because I didn't know about it, but because I never experienced it before in this way. I was walking on the street, and I just finished a panel on it was like a talk in an insurance company that invited me as an activist to talk about racism and talk about diversity and inclusion, which is a topic that is very popular right now, and especially in this kind of in this kind of environments. And I was as a guest, I was asked to share what my experience was and what we do as a association for helping the future going in a bright and nice direction. We shared a lot of nice experience, what actually is changing in the last 20-25 years. And so I was very happy about this. We were in this amazing building and amazing people, and everybody was like super welcoming. And while I was walking back to the car, two Italian kids, maybe my age, maybe a little younger, 30, 31, slowed down the car, rolled down the window, and they made the sound of the monkey to me. I right there I understood what was going on. They kept going. They kept like giving me like different kind of like facial expressions as to keep insulting me. And what happened to me and my body was that I froze right away. And I was upset, and I was mad. I was ashamed. I was feeling so many different feelings, and I didn't do anything. I also didn't know what I was maybe supposed to do, and I thought about it later. But and the point is, then after I thought about it, and what I actually wanted to turn this bad situation in was knowing what we could do, or I could do, and the people that feel the same way can do about it after, how they heal themselves from this trauma. So that's how I found you while I was Googling. I saw Ashley McGirt, racial trauma therapist. So it's like exactly what you do. And as a job, which we don't have in Italy, just so you know, you have a space also here if you want to feel. And I wanted to know, what can we do? And I have so many questions, but I want you to tell me what happened, what
Yeah,
happened to
so
me in that
what you
moment.
experienced was literally a form of racial trauma. And racial trauma is a form of race-based stress that individuals of color experience in response to direct instances of racism or indirect. So in your case, it was very direct, as they were referring to you as a monkey and making all of those animal-like gestures, not recognizing the humanity in who you are. But because of how you look and how you show up, they put these animalistic like characteristics on you. And what that does is really similar to PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, heard of, and we often liken it to those veterans, individuals who've experienced trauma, sexual trauma. We don't often think of the trauma from racism and the impact that it actually has on our mental health, our physical health, all of those things. And fear, hypervigilance, a whole list of psychological ramifications that follow from racial trauma, whether it be microaggressions, macroaggressions, and just a little FYI, I'm a little biased because I don't believe in microaggressions. Honestly, they're all macro. You can't tell me that there's a little minor instance of racism, prejudice, bigotry that doesn't hurt, that doesn't impact our body. So first, that's what you were experiencing. You were prejudiced. You were experiencing overt bigotry. And then, like you said, you froze. So when these things happen to us, or even when they happen to others, so I imagine there were other people there who actually saw and witnessed that. And then they were exposed to vicarious trauma, other forms of racial trauma, and witnessing it. And then that, of course, had an impact on their body, on their psyche as well. So we often think that if it didn't happen to me, if nobody called me the N-word, or nobody, referred to me as an animal and didn't see my humanity and didn't see who I was as a human being here on this earth, that it's not racism, but it is. And it is very harmful to who we are in our bodies, especially Black and brown bodies. And when you look at the statistics of poor health outcomes for communities of color, we see that we are faring far worse than white communities. And I really attribute it to systemic racism.
Is it a stupid question to ask, how do you recognize, if you have a list, how you recognize racism? Like, is there something that is, I don't know, like is highlights, this is what you're actually experiencing
Yeah,
is
so
racism?
Racism gets really confused with some of the other terms that I've just utilized when it comes to bigotry, prejudice, stereotypes. Those are all byproducts of racism, but what racism is, it's really a system of power and privilege that impacts communities of color. And without that element of power, it's not actually racism, then it's prejudice, it's bigotry. And oftentimes people use the terms interchangeably. And in my work, I really stress that it's a system of power and privilege. So when you get those two things, that equals racism. Hopefully that makes sense. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, no,
And
I was just going to say it's
so,
so
yeah, sorry.
pervasive and it impacts everyone across the globe. Oftentimes, we think it's so confined to America because of the history of American chattel slavery, but it's everywhere. It's in Italy, France, like everywhere. There's no.
Yes, we have a different way to approach to racism. In Italy, um, we go back to tradition and how a traditional Italian is, how manners or how we accept things in a certain way. So when it's not like that, you are entitled to make make jokes or think that something it's okay, like boundaries that are just disappear as soon as is a black person in the room, or you have a relationship with a person that is for in your head is below you. So but are there like tips to that I can use, that we can use for to go past this bad feelings? Like I felt I froze. I felt I couldn't do anything. I was very afraid that something even worse could happen. I didn't know, even after when I went back home, if I had to do something or if I had to just tell myself to that these things happen, and you can accept it and go
And
ahead.
that's
Is there something
a very
specific?
sad and unfortunate part about my work. So what I really do is I teach people coping skills. I teach people how to cope with racism, because unfortunately, unless there's some miracle or act of God that really undoes the policies, the systems of oppression that is the very fiber of racism, then it's still going to occur. So yes, there are things that you can do, but like I said, it's coping skills, and it's going to help you to cope and really care for yourself. So one is really honoring yourself and the feelings that came up in that moment. So you recognize that you
Mm-hmm.
froze. As you froze, there was a feeling that manifested itself in your body. So I'm a somatic clinician, and I really like to heal the body, because trauma stays in the body, and that's what's killing us, especially as people of color, when we look at the rates of high blood pressure, chronic stress-related illnesses, COPD, strokes, all of these things. And so when you get in tune with your body and you're like, okay, where did I feel it? Was it in my chest? Was it in my head? Was it in my stomach? Oftentimes, as women, we really feel things in our gut. And so honoring and feeling that space, and taking pause, those are some things that you can do. Some grounding practices. I really like to do progressive muscle relaxation, because I'm having so progressive
What is it?
muscle relaxation basically is the idea that stress and trauma stores itself in your body. And so you have to get that out of your body. But as people of, we're often
Mm.
considered resilient, and we just get through. It's like, oh, that's another thing, another person, another racist incident, and we continue to move on, but our bodies don't. And it gets stuck in our body. So progressive muscle relaxation, it's so simple. It's really just tightening. I'm trying to see where this camera is really just tightening and releasing your muscles like free times, go on YouTube and you can YouTube progressive muscle relaxation, and they can walk you through it. And I like to do it. I have a high bed, so it depends on if you have a high or low bed. But my bed's very high. And so before my feet even touch the ground, I'll go into a round of progressive muscle relaxation. And I'm like stretching my feet across the room as if you're like trying to touch the other side of the wall with your feet. And then you do it really tight, and then you release. Tight. I start from the soles of my feet because I have a high bed, and that's how I'll do it, like I said, as a morning routine. And then I'll just go from my feet to my calves, to my thighs, to my glutes. Like literally you should be raising off your seat because I'm tightening my glutes, those butt muscles there, and going up and down and releasing. Stomach, core, and you just go throughout your whole body, even your face, and you're gonna look a little weird, but you're like tightening those facial muscles. And so like I said, you can have a walkthrough if you don't know how to do it. Super, super simple, and it's going to save you on so much stress. It's going to save your bodies, and I would really like to think that it would prolong our lives, because we know that people of color across the globe are dying at disproportionate rates when it comes to stress. And what's the most thing that's stressing us out? Racism, money, financial crisis, like all of these things. Money's impacted because of race. Like all of these things go back and they tie back to one another. But yeah, so that's one tool. Progressive muscle relaxation. Tapping, that's another one. And these are like free tools. It costs you nothing. It does cost you an internet connection and YouTube, because you'll have to go do it to figure it out, or you can have somebody walk you through it, but I guess access to the internet. But tapping is another tool, and it's like acupuncture for the brain. Harvard did a study on it, and they actually looked at people with high rates of anxiety who did traditional talk therapy, which is also I do as a therapist, people who did acupuncture and people who did tapping, and they scanned their brains, and those who did tapping had the most improved brain scans and lower rates of anxiety. And it's literal traditional practices, things that indigenous people did to heal themselves, tapping on those points. I really love the hand. When you do it, you'll find a point that feels really good to you. And for me and my body, like the back of my hand, this feels really good. And so this is one of the starting points where you'll tap it out. I got this big bud, but like the middle of your head, in between your eyes, below your eyes. So there's different points right here. And so you'll do a round, and then what you do, well, first you'll want to recognize what it is that's going on. So like, I feel really frustrated and stressed, embarrassed. I was called a monkey in front of my peers. I'm mad, I'm frustrated. So you say all the negative feelings, and you do the rounds of tapping, or focus on one point, like I like the hand. But you'll want to do the different, this one is uncomfortable for me, but you should definitely, you can't really see it. It's like in between, like your ribs. So yeah, there's different ones, but you'll do a little round of it, and you'll say all the negative things that are going on, and then you affirm yourself with something positive, and you tap it out. So in that instance, even though I'm feeling really frustrated, embarrassed, and angry about the incident, I still love and accept myself. I still see the humanity in myself. And then you'll do that, and you'll do a continuous round. And if you don't know what to say on YouTube, you could type in tapping. I speak a lot and I get really nervous, and I'll do tapping for public speaking. And so there'll be a script. If you've just experienced a loss, you can do tapping for grief, like tapping for anxiety. And there's different scripts on there. And then you can take what feels good to you and leave what doesn't, because sometimes the script may not apply to you.
And is there a specific time, or is there a time that with help, so with the exercise, and if you can also like meeting constantly with a therapist, is there a time that can be considered like a standard time for healing from this kind
And
of
that's the sad
traumas?
part about my work. Honestly, it's an ongoing healing process because it's
Mm,
always happening. If
okay.
we're looking at Italy, and I just, I think about what happened with, what is it, Aquila, the Nigerian vendor who was murdered, and they refused to like acknowledge that that was an instance of racism, and that's racial trauma. That's gaslighting.
Yeah.
So I
Also, also from the people, for the people that um, I mean, follow the news and can hear it, and I mean, it's not just the trauma of the person and the family, is also the trauma from the people that can relate to the person, to the personalities, to the story, and feel that there is some kind of injustice and stuff like that, right? Because I learned that from your videos, so I understand that also there is some kind of like indirect
Exactly. And
trauma.
so I say that because sadly, there's always something that's happening that may trigger us and reinstate those feelings. So we have to constantly do these practices. It's ongoing, from speaking with a therapist, tapping, progressive muscle relaxation, grounding yourself. That is how Native American, indigenous people, since you're in Italy, I'm here in America, we've got the Native Americans, but this is how indigenous people healed. At African people, they would literally step out on the ground barefoot and allow that to send the healing vibes back into their bodies. All of these different things. We joke here and we call people tree huggers, but really, like, when you're in tune with nature and you're feeling nature, it helps heal the self. Having a tribe of people who understand what you're going through, like-minded individuals, you're like, man, this is effed up. I understand the themes that you're going. So I think that's super important, so you don't feel isolated, or you don't feel like just.
Ashley, I think we did.
Yeah, did that cut
Can you
out?
hear
Did
me?
you hear?
Yes.
But
Yeah, just the
yeah,
last part.
no. Essentially, what I'm is, yes, you'll recover from your particular incident, but there's always something that's happening that can re-trigger it, and then we have to heal from that. Otherwise, we become desensitized to it. We become desensitized to instances of racism, and we become numb to it. And that itself is very problematic and
And
harms us. When we become
say that again.
desensitized to racism, and that means
Mm-hmm.
we become numb to it, where it's like, oh, that's another George
Mm-hmm.
Floyd, another Eric Garner, mm, and it has no impact.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
think about Toni Morrison. She has this beautiful quote, and she says, I want to be shocked every single time. Like, every time I hear about injustices, systems of racism, I want to be shocked. I don't want to become numb to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels on a different level here, because we are not like um we I mean, it's just like the things that happen here are just different, and you don't want to make the difference between those two words, and I understand why. I agree, but maybe here there is more of the microaggressions than the microaggressions than macro, and that's one thing. But I honestly feel it like a global reality that needs to be addressed. And what I want to ask you, so that we can have one last tip, for because I want to be able to recognize everything. So how usually does this kind of trauma come up in the body? Like you were saying it before. I want us to kind of like have a list of ways that this trauma comes up, and you can read it in the body, so you yourself as well can read it and can recognize it. Because what happens here, especially with young kids, is that you have to, you're taught to laugh about it. You're taught to turn the other way. Oh, they're stupid, they're ignorant, and you just have to basically be the bigger person, be the one that is more cultured and doesn't start something that is gonna end nowhere. So I want people to be able to recognize that there is a trauma that needs to be healed for themselves. So is there any particular thing that happens to your body that
Does.
could
And
be an
so I'm a
alarm?
researcher, and I always like to go to the science so people know it's not, hey, Ashley's just making stuff up about racism and just pulling the race card, you know, all the things that say actual
Yeah,
science
yeah.
behind it that really looks at how it shows up in the body and how it impacts behaviors. And so when we're looking at instances of racism, whether it's the microaggressions that you're saying are more prevalent there or macroaggressions. But like I said, I don't believe in microaggressions, because if you just as like a tiny bee sting, you have 100 bee stings, your hand's like about to fall off. So when that happens over and over, you feel the magnitude of that pain, where it may be like, okay, that's one little bee sting, but it happens 100 times, 200 times. And then you're watching your cousins, your friends, your sisters get all those tiny bee stings like that. That has a problem. So basically the science is there's a racist event that happens. So your that we started with being referred to as a monkey, an animal. Then you have a traumatic reaction. For you, it was froze. For other people, it's disbelief, it's shame, it's humiliation, it's confusion. Like, were they talking about me? Was it me? Then you start looking around, start looking at your surroundings. I know these people were not just mimicking a monkey for me. So, you know, it's that confusion, questioning yourself. Is there somebody else it could be? Anybody but me. And then there's things where you may re-experience that event. So you'll have distressing memories, nightmares, intrusive thoughts, maybe that sidewalk or that area that you want to avoid. And that's where the avoidance comes in. If it was like a store or a place, it's like, okay, I'm not going to go to that store anymore. I'm going to isolate. I'm going to, you know, start to develop agoraphobic type symptoms that can happen. Then there's negative moods and cognitions. And this isn't linear. It can happen at any level with any individual. The avoidance could come before you re-experience it. So it's not in an and then that's when those negative moods and cognitions come up, where it's like depression, anxiety, you feeling like the world is unsafe, just everyone is harmful, all of these different things. And then there's physiological reactions that may or may not occur. For me, when I'm stressed out, I feel it in my neck. And until I alleviate that stress, it doesn't go away. Some people get migraine. Children, you'll see children have nosebleeds a lot. And that's because the baby don't know how to articulate what it is that's actually going on. A child doesn't have the language to explain, hey, I think this might have been a microaggression. I think this person might have been racist. But their body feels it, and they know that it's hurtful and it's painful. And then their nose starts to bleed. And this happens for adults too. My aunt, she's actually a chronic nosebleeder. So when she's stressed, her nose bleeds. But we tend to see it in young children. Other physiological signs: difficulty sleeping, difficulty concentrating. So these are ways that people see it in their bodies, and each person is different. Some people may not feel any physiological signs, and that's just because they've experienced so much and they've numb to it. Some people don't even freeze like how you froze. It's just like, oh, there it goes again. This is just the way of the world. So it doesn't mean that you didn't experience it because you didn't have X, Y, and Z. You did. And if it's real to you, it's valid, because some people will always try to gaslight you. Well, that wasn't my intent to make a monkey-like gesture or a monkey-like sound. And they'll say all these things that will try to make you feel as though that didn't happen and that your reaction wasn't valid.
I thank you so much, because all this is just a tip. You know, I have so many questions and things that I would like to understand, and and hopefully we can maybe do this again. I find that certain things happen all around the world, but there is a part of the world that actually addresses the problem and wants to solve it, and a part of the world that wants to ignore it, because someday in some year it's going to be old news. But it's not old news in Italy, for sure. And I would like to be able to help more. So I found this chat with you so so great, so open. Like it gave me so much to think about, and hopefully also to the people that will check it out even after tonight. I want to thank you again, Ashley McGirt. How do you say your
Adair.
second last name? Adair?
Yeah.
Adair. So Ashley McGirt Adair, thank you so much. It was precious, and hopefully you will join
Absolutely.
us
Thank you for
again.
having me. We got to have a longer conversation because 30 minutes is not enough. We didn't really talk about how
Nothing.
racism shows up globally, or even looking at Italy and just the history of colonialism in Italy with Ethiopia and how that impacts race relations, all those different things. But yeah, thank you for having me on this platform. Thank you for being brave enough to have this conversation, because like you said, people don't want to talk about
Thank
it
you.
because they're comfortable, and nobody wants to be uncomfortable. Racism, that's that uncomfortable big elephant in the room that everyone sees but we don't want to address. And when I think about that, I think about, what does not addressing racism do? Who does it harm when we don't have conversations?
It's exactly what I don't want to kind of help. I don't want to help go to that direction with me not talking about it if I can. And also, like, maybe we can talk together about what we could talk more about in other lives and other meetings. Is there a place where people can go and find your things? I know you wrote a book. I know that you have a lot of things going on every day. Can you tell us where to find you and
Yeah,
how to
so
contact
there's
you?
a link on my Instagram, Therapy with Ash, with which I'm on right now, and it has a link to my website. And actually, we are having our inaugural behavioral health conference that is really about working to improve mental health outcomes for communities of color. And I'm going to be presenting on racial trauma, and it's going to be virtual. I know it's going to be a time difference because it starts at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I don't know what time that is for y'all in Italy. You can also catch the recording. So that's something that I would encourage everyone to attend. Right now, we are having early bird tickets, and if you use the discount code education, it'll give you 30%
Okay.
off the registration, and that's for the whole month of March right now if you sign up. But if you're interested in having this conversation, learning more about racial trauma, like I said, I'll be presenting. We have some other presenters, Dr. Patrice Douglas, who's going to be presenting on the DSM-5 for the culture, and really looking at how
Mm-hmm.
diagnoses are harmful and the racist elements behind that. We're going to be talking about human trafficking, sexual assault in Latinx communities. Oh, there's so many different dynamic workshops, and you can find all of that in my hyperlink on Therapy with Ash. Like, it'll show a link to all the events. And again, just use that promo code education for a 30% discount.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It should be around 3 p.m. here, so I
Okay.
think we're fine if I'm not making the math wrong. Yes, so maybe we can do that. Thank you so much. That is very exciting to hear. And again, like, it was a great talk that we had, and it was just a tiny part of what more we could do together, and hopefully soon. So I thank you again for your time.
Have a good
It's precious. So talk to you.
likewise.
I hope
Bye.
hopefully I talk to you soon. Ciao.